have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hamane, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another great episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I hope you all had a happy Halloween. For those of you in the States, by the way, because remember, we are internationally syndicated via Late Night in the Midlands with the terrestrial stations in the United States, as well as Deprogram Radio Network in the United Kingdom and EU. For those of you in the East, or literally not East, I would say Western Europe, obviously you didn't celebrate Halloween, so I hope you had a happy Wednesday/Thursday morning. Quick announcement. Remember, tomorrow we are no longer doing encores, but we are doing Flashback Fridays. You get to hear my very, very first interview I've ever done, going back to March 25th, 2013. Guest was Stanton Friedman. So I hope you guys all enjoy that, and you'll see how times have changed. Now, following in line with our double guest shows lately, the second hour, you're going to hear from Daniel Estulin. Daniel Estulin has the resume that really you can't beat. He worked for the Russian Federation right under the I don't remember exactly. I don't want to say foreign press secretary, but he was a diplomat that had access to Vladimir Putin. He also worked as a Russian spy for the FSB. He also worked right under two Latin American nations with the president or prime ministers, depending on which of the two countries, which of the ones they were. And get this, he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2015. He wrote the largest, most best-selling book on the Bilderbergers, available in 42 languages, 68 countries, and he's there to talk to you about why it's important for you to vote for Trump and for Republicans, because we are in a war for the deep state. Again, you're going to hear that in the second hour. Hour one, we bring you a guest that I've been wanting to talk to for quite some time. Again, following in line with our Halloween week, and this guest will be able to give us a really cool Halloween story near the end of the show. He is a paranormal investigator. He is also a motivational speaker. You might have seen him on Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, or at the many events he does. And that happens to be the one and only Mr. Dustin Pari. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, man. My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Again, the pleasure is all here. The people are here to listen to you, dear friend. So let's actually, let me, before I even go into how you started with Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, what made you become a paranormal investigator? What about it drew you to it? Any experiences or anything like that?
As a kid, I always loved Halloween, man. Always, like favorite holiday, favorite time of year. These last 3 months of the year are just the best. But I did have an encounter with what we now classify as a shadow figure, one of the 6 feet tall variety ones, when I was just around 9 years old. It was just kind of lingering there in the doorway of my bedroom, and it was completely backlit. My family was still up and everything. I was, being a little younger, was already in bed, but it petrified me at the time. I just kind of covered my head and said my prayers and never wanted to see that thing again. But it planted, that seed of curiosity. I wanted to know more about it. And that's when I started reading, books and trying to find out more, New England folklore and legends. And that's where it all really came together.
Now, you said you were a kid. Approximately what age? Did other things started happening after that, or you were sucked into the paranormal and you wanted to get answers?
No, I just got right into it, man. I was just around 9 years old, and I just started wondering, if that thing was there, if this shadow figure was there, what was it? Why was it visiting me? And what else was out there? And, took a long time for me to be able to get out there and start investigating and stuff, Didn't really hit the road until, one of my buddies had his license. And, but, all the things that, listen, I can always do the right thing, right? So the disclaimer is, don't go into abandoned buildings, don't break into places, don't do any of that. But we had this old funeral home near our house. And we go there, ride bikes in the parking lot. We make jumps and stuff and ramps. And there was a loose piece of plywood on one of the back windows that you could go in. And they had a casket in there still. And we, take turns laying in the casket. You just freak each other out. There was really nothing going on there, but it was creepy and it was fun. And it was, some of the first kind of things I would do. And but once I get older, I get a chance to get out there on the road and start exploring some of the New England legends. I really enjoyed it, and it's been a lifelong passion ever since.
Now, I normally don't talk about what other guests say, but I heard something that to me is still so mind-blowing that I at least have to tell you what it was and see if you agree with it. Grant Wilson was on, and of all the years and decades I've been studying extraterrestrials, paranormal, ghosts, exorcisms, poltergeists, etc., I left that interview with one thing that is so ingrained in my head. He said, on many ghost hunts, I said, what do you normally talk to them about? He said, I always ask them what we appear to them, what we humans appear to them as ghosts. His answer was shadows. And I thought that was crazy because of all the shadows that we see. So I guess the question to frame to you is, one, did you ever think that was a possibility, or did you even know that? Or if you didn't, what's your take on that possibility? Because obviously we can't prove it.
Yeah, well, Grant, I've known Grant a long time. And I have conversations with him sometimes, and it leaves me boggled. And the whole idea that perhaps even some of these things, some of these occurrences that happen in places that are familiar to us, like maybe we're haunting ourselves. Like who knows how it works? Some of the time slip theories and those kind of things. But yeah, I do the same thing. I always ask, what's it like where you are? Can you see us? What do we look like? And it does seem like just as we kind of perceive those shadows, they may be perceiving us as the same. So it's very interesting, and you start wondering about quantum physics and string theory and all these things. And there's so much to still explore and to learn. And that's, to me, that's part of the charm of the whole field. It always kind of gets me when people say, well, I'm the expert of this and that. And I say, well, that's wonderful. Like maybe some of us have more knowledge or experience with one part or another, but it's such an unproven thing still. Like I know it exists. I know the spirit world exists. I know there's other things out there. But to say that anybody is one person is the expert with all the knowledge and the best of the best on one subject or another, I still find that hard to get behind, just because there's so much for us still to think about.
Oh, I definitely agree. I don't think in any field there is one or even a group of people that I would say know all the answers, because you probably know this as well as I do, Dustin, from both our research, what I've done in UFOs going back to literally the 80s. The more I had a certain amount of questions going in, but yet as I go in and start to investigate and have some questions answered, each answer opens up 10 to 100 more questions. So to tell you I know more than then would be an understatement, but at the same time, you could also say I'm more lost, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh, now, I totally get you, man. Too. And I love all the other stuff too, man. Like I love the UFOs and everything. Like at one point, my room in high school, there was like mannequin heads of Greys. There were like Project Blue Book, copies everywhere. Like I had all these documents out and stuff. Because to me, it's all connected somehow. All those bigger things, man. And I think the importance of all of it, whether you're into crypto creatures, you're into UFOs, you're into spirits, I think it serves an incredible purpose in making us realize our place and making us feel small at some point, because I think we need that. This material world is so heavily impressed upon us all the time, between politics and religion and finances and paying for bills and Amazon boxes cluttering up your house. It's nice to feel small and to know there's bigger things out there that we cannot even fully fathom yet.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. And that the possibility that there's so much out there that we don't even know. And one step further, what about the things that not only we don't know, but can't even perceive that it possibly exist? I think that's part of the reason that keeps driving me more. And I would think that's probably what you encountered, because even though extraterrestrials and on everything I've studied with UFOs clearly have abilities to remote shut you down or some shape shift and disappear and appear at will, for some reason ghosts scare me more. I think there's just so much more to the ghosts paradigm than there is to the UFOs.
Well, there might be, but there's a lot less case studies about abductions and any type of anal probing with the ghosts. So I'll stay with them.
Very true. Very true. Okay, now let's talk about Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International. When did you start working with those two? And also Destination America, I believe it was, off the top of my head, or am I wrong?
Destination Truth.
Truth. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that. I was just thinking off the top
okay.
of my head. So when did you start in your roles?
So Ghost Hunters, I started with them just around their second season on television. I was working as an EMT at the time. I originally had a career in the media for CBS and Fox, and then I switched over into working in the healthcare. I was working on an ambulance, and I came home one night, and I was flicking through TV, and I saw Ghost Hunters, and I was like, wow, what is this? Like, I usually would take people out. Like, after I got off my shift in the ambulance, people would show up. I'd take them out to places in the woods, these old abandoned buildings, tell them all the ghost stories. We'd have a little fun. And all of a sudden, I see guys are walking around people's homes, and they're being invited, and they're, like recording things and playing things back for the clients. I'm like, this is much better than getting chased out by the cops and local neighbors and things like that, And so I was like the original fanboy. Like I sent everybody emails. I'm like, hey, like you guys are, your headquarters is like 2 miles from my house. Like I really would love to come and talk to you guys. I've got a degree in video and radio production. Like I see the way you take care of your DVR equipment. Like I could help you out with this stuff. I've been researching for years on my own. And it took a couple of emails back and forth because originally nobody got back to me. But I'm always one to say never give up, and I didn't. And eventually I got an interview with the guys, and they're like, listen, we love your backstory, we love what you know, but we don't need anybody else on the show. And I was fine. I already had like 2 jobs at the time, so I said I just want access to homes, without getting chased out. So I did a couple of home cases, and then a couple of months later, they were getting ready for season 2, and they asked me to do some cases with them. And I never quit my day job in healthcare. TV was fun for me, but I never thought this is the way I'm going to, pay my bills and take care of my family. So it was always a side gig for me. Even when I did GHI, the international show, I took leaves of absences. I took, vacation time. So I did Ghost Hunters for a couple of seasons, and I got married, and I kind of just backed away from it just because I was so busy in my family life. I wanted to get started and be home and be a good husband. And then it was the economy kind of tanked a little bit. They were doing GHI. They asked me to come do that, and I said, check things out. Talk to my wife, and my little one was just born. She was just about a year old, but it was a good opportunity, and I'm very thankful for. I think I've been to like 27 countries, and I'm so thankful for the incredible places I get to go and the people I get to meet. Growing up as a kid, I studied death and dying and sociology. Like these were the passions, and these were the things I enjoyed. And so to be able to immerse myself in cultures 2-3 weeks at a time, half the world away, like I covered 6 continents and all this stuff. It was amazing. But then, as I told my buddy Barry, my Irish buddy out there, we were driving back one morning because we worked right till sunrise. And I said, Barry, I've seen about 2 sunrises with my wife. I've seen countless with you. It's time for me to go home. And I decided it was time to focus on family and stuff. So I did. And I always left on good terms. I appreciated all the people on the show. And a couple of years go by, and they sucked me back in to finish out Ghost Hunters for their final 2 seasons, which we just finished about a year and a half ago now, I guess. So it's been an incredible and very amazing ride that I'm very thankful for all the opportunities it's opened up for me. And I still love the paranormal, and I'm still crazy active in it.
When you were going to different countries and, of course, access to houses that you were given, let's talk about some specific locations. First, starting with my local backyard and the giant boat in, I don't want to say San Pedro or Long Beach, but the RMS Queen Mary. Have you been there, obviously? I would think so.
I know. Funny enough, I didn't get to go to the Queen Mary, man. I was supposed to go out to do that, and then something came up with my job or something, and I didn't get to make that trip, man. And it's funny, even like with the events and everything, like for some reason, that's one of those locations that just can't seem to line it up. I get invites, but it never seems to work out for me. It's still a tough balance. And I think because it's so far away, it's hard to get out to that coast, to handle that one. So not yet, but I'm sure we'll get there sometime.
Now, let's talk about some other places that maybe I would just know from that are famous in the U.S. as being haunted spots, or anything that sticks out in your head that people in the U.S. that are listening would be able to say, hey, I know exactly where that is. I've heard that this place is haunted, but I never knew some details about it. What would you talk about?
Well, some of the ones that always top the bill are like Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum over in West Virginia. It's such a huge, incredible building and fancy architecture, and it's interesting too. We do a lot with places that were old archaic structures built for mental illness, and that lasted a long period of time and then become defunct. And I think it's easy for us to point fingers and say, wow, what a horrible group of people. They were doing such horrible things to these people there. But I think we often glaze over the fact that some of these things were, 100 years ago. And some of these doctors and nurses and volunteers were doing the best they could with mental illness that they didn't understand. And they were researching. And yeah, by today's standards, by far, things were barbaric and horrible. And you would think back then they should have known it as well. But places like that always make me think, listen, they were doing the best they could. And yeah, some horrible things happen, and it's awful, and it's tragic. But I think a lot of times we demonize, the doctors and nurses that work there, when at the time it was standard of care. It wasn't great, but they were trying, But places like that, Waverly, the beautiful old tuberculosis clinic and everything. That is one of my favorites too. Just going up on the third floor there, you get these huge bay doors, like where the patients would be wheeled outside to get in the fresh air and to walk through there. One of my favorite things to do on investigations, and they couldn't show this on the show because of copyright and stuff, but I like to play music from the time period when that place was functioning. So there, you're playing stuff from like the 40s and things, the 30s and 40s, and a lot of big band music and Chattanooga Choo Choo and everything. But I feel like I want to create a welcoming environment for any of the spirits that are there. I want them to be a part of the interaction. I don't want to sit there with the recorder with the usual like paranormal 101 questions. What's your name? When did you die? What do you like? It's so damn gloom and doom, man, and that is not my style. And I create a nice little inviting atmosphere that I hope is comforting and get people to come forward and talk with me. And that's where I've had the most success. And I love using music a lot because it's something that's so important to me in my life. Like I always have a lyric or a theme song or something that brings me back or helps me to relate to the scenario. And I think that the spirit world, I think, recognizes that. And I think that that helps communication methods a lot.
Now, a lot of people talk about going to places that have malevolent ghosts versus benevolent ghosts. Have you encountered both, or ghosts that are just in the middle, maybe mischievous? And maybe the perception of malevolent ghosts is more of a myth because maybe they're just ghosts that are mischievous and maybe a little more intelligent?
Well, I'll tell you, man, I can tell you from my time working in CBS News and Fox News for years, if it bleeds, it leads. And if investigators and would-be investigators are getting their information from what they see in movies and reality TV shows, although there's a lot of great investigators out there, a lot of the stuff that we do gets edited down. And what do they go with? They go with the negative stuff because that's what people want. I mean, it's just like our social media feeds and stuff. You look at it, like I put out positive motivational stuff all the time. And like I look at the retweets and stuff that I get versus like some negative story or something like that. Like as much as we say we hate the darkness and we want to live in love and light and peace, we glorify the darkness all the time. We put it out there. We feed into it. So people think like, and this is a big thing for me when I do event investigations. I tell people, leave all that gloom and doom knowledge at home. All right. Stop with the, are you in pain? Are you this? They're in the spirit world. It's not the perception that you have of it. It's been my experience over the years that when you get a negative style entity, it's usually somebody who's just grumpy. It's somebody who doesn't want to be bothered. It's our personalities from this life carrying over into that life as well. And I think it's so important for people to look for the positive things. I did an event recently in Petoskey, Michigan. And we rotate groups, like they do at most of these things. Like every hour you rotate the attendees and stuff so they get a chance to work with everybody. And one of the assistants I had with me, this guy was hanging out with me most of the night. After the third one, he said, I was using like one of the Ghost Box apps things that I like. And he said, I've never heard so many jovial spirits. He's like, they were laughing. They were like making little jokes and things. Like I'll ask a question and I get like a sarcastic, but funny answer. He's like, how does that happen? It's like, well, because that's what I look for. That's my personality. If you bait your hook for negativity, you're going to get it. It's not hard to catch in this life and the afterlife. If you want misery, you can find it. But it works just as well if you're looking for a positive interaction. And that's what I want out of it. I want a conversation with the other side that leaves me feeling good about things. It's and knowing that it's not all gloom and doom and misery. And dear Lord, if I have to listen to one more person say, "Do you know you're dead?" man, it just makes me want to walk away from the whole thing. But I think to myself, you know what? It's not their fault. This is what they've been shown, and this is what they think to be true, and this is my duty to educate them differently.
Now, some people have talked about when they've gone to certain places or towns that even though what they're doing is right or in line of helping people or just investigating, the towns themselves are involved in some sort of black magic, and yet they hold people down. I believe this happened a few times with ghost hunters. Do you know of any of those cases, or is this just sort of a myth again?
Well, I can't speak specifically to any case, but I mean, there's been places and stuff that like we go to do events. There's been places where I go to do lectures. And, you get people that are like, everything you do is demonic. And it's like, calm down. Like, what is your understanding? Like, what is your basis for that? They automatically think, because you're doing something with something they're not familiar with, that it has to be evil. It's the whole Ouija board thing. Spirit board communication can be done very safely and very respectfully, just as any investigation technique can. But also it could be done in a bad way. But because it's been glamorized via television, movies, and things as an evil thing, people are like, oh, my God, I never used that. But then they'll sit there and talk to their flashlight for a half hour. And I'm like, okay, but you're still trying to communicate, right? You're still putting that light on saying, hey, I'm interested in talking to the other side. And I get it. Your hands aren't on the planchette or whatever. But if you're walking around using your K2 meter, your hands on that, I don't think it has to do with so much the physical contact. I don't think it has to do with the physical medium. Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with intention. And if you're trying to put that light on and attract something negative, you can do it, but you don't have to choose that.
Thank you for explaining that, Dustin, because I think a lot of people just give the misperception that, hey, if you do certain things, then that's automatically going to invite some sort of even demonic possession is what some people say. But I have always believed it's your intention. Are you sending out the ill will of the intention of, if you believe in the law of attraction, to the universe or to that spirit or to anything that you do? Because if you're putting in that negative energy and that negative intent, well, then what the heck do you expect to happen? So I'm very glad you pointed that out, because I was kind of hoping for an answer like that, because I got to tell you, Dustin, I've been sort of upset with the answers I've been getting because they sort of scare people off, Now, one great thing that I want to talk to you about, and if this is the wrong time to talk about it, then of course we won't, is the fact that you're a motivational speaker. And I could already tell just by talking to you for this last 25 minutes on air, and besides what we talked about before on air, you take everything in a positive light. And I think it radiates off you. And this is probably why people go see you as a motivational speaker. So let's talk about how you started to become that, because I could tell you've had that positive energy probably your whole life.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And it hasn't always been easy, and it's still not easy. People see that you've been on a TV show, and instantly they think like you're rich and famous and everything's easy. It's like, I've never quit my day job, and that's not because I really enjoy working a day job. It's because I have bills to pay. I continue to do my work in the field and my motivational work because that's my passion and that's what I love to do. The motivational stuff happened just the way things do sometimes. It's like watching a documentary film. Like, you start out on one path and you end up somewhere else, but it ends up being more rewarding. And for me, it was the paranormal that got me into all this stuff, and I still love it. But as I'm out there, specifically with Ghost Hunters International at the time, I get a modest little platform. I did a couple of years on one show, and now I'm over here, and people are watching, and I'm thankful for it. I was newly married and with a little girl, and my cohorts, a lot of production guys and stuff are young single guys, and you get one day off a week. Young single guys go do what they do. They go down to the bars, they go out looking for girls and stuff, and I would usually go out, buy around for everybody if I could, and then go back to my hotel. And I'd hang out with Barry for a little bit. We talk theory or whatever, watch a TV show, and then I go to my room. And I always did spiritual research and Bible study and stuff just for myself. But then I'd go online, and in MySpace, the thing we had before Facebook, which I think the new way of telling time is like BC and AD. It's like before Facebook and after Facebook. So in the time before, when we were all on the MySpace, I would go on there and I'd get messages from people, and there'd be messages about the show, and then all of a sudden there'd be like an orb picture, and like, oh, is this my grandmother? I don't know. I never met the woman. Maybe, and I try to give them answers and I try to give them understanding. But then it went from that to like work advice. Like, I hate my job, and I'm thinking, I walk around in the dark on TV. Why are you writing to me? But people feel a connection. And so I took the time to write them back. I'm like, well, what do you do? What do you want to do? What's your training? And then try to get them, to reach out for what was next in their life and not to grow comfortable and not to grow frustrated. And then it went from that to there was love life advice and all this stuff. And I always make a joke. I was like, I became like a paranormal Dear Abby for people, like fixing problems and bringing people together from my hotel room somewhere in Eastern Europe at the time. And it became a regular thing. And then from there, it got more serious, and people would write to me with suicidal thoughts, and they were looking for help, and they were looking for understanding. And I think the paranormal kind of lends itself to attract some people that kind of struggle with things sometimes. A lot of us are freaks and geeks, and that's completely fine. I always say, let your freak flag fly, man. Like, just be who you are. But a lot of us get mistreated by, popular culture growing up and stuff, especially when we first got into this stuff. It wasn't easy to talk about. There were no TV shows that were so mainstream. There was a couple, but nothing like, there's whole channels now that are paranormal. So a lot of us were, those freaks at the back table in high school, and we were given a rough time. So I can understand where they're coming from,
And yet
so
now we're in the forefront.
Yeah, so bizarre, man, so bizarre. But I always believe in like just leaving the light on for people and trying to help people. And more people come to events and they're like, hey, you wrote back to me one night. It really helped me. I was in a bad place. And I be honest, a lot of times I don't remember, but I'm just happy that the spirit moved me to do it. And I'm happy that I'm able to help. So every night for the last like 4 or 5 years, when I sign off my social media, I always leave on Twitter at least. I always leave the national, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And just in case somebody's in a dark place and needs that little light on, needs that little bit of hope, But I get out there. I do a couple lectures that benefit that foundation every year, and I do motivational lectures now for middle school on up. Because unfortunately the suicide rates for kids is very high. Between 10 and 13 is like I think one of the highest proportions of increase in the last couple of years. That's sad. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're so technological savvy and we're so materialistic that we've lost our spirituality. Yes. Our ancient ancestors, man, would stare up in the sky. They'd look at the stars. They'd think about the gods. They'd think about big picture stuff. And now we just walk around looking at our phones. You probably know this because you're a UFO guy. Like 2 weeks ago, I saw there was a report that aliens are not visiting us anymore. UFOs are not seen as much anymore. And the only thing I thought of is, despite all the different things and theories that they had, I think Trump got blamed at least twice in the list. And I looked at this and I'm like, has anybody thought we're not looking up anymore? Like, we walk around just staring at our phones. Like, our world is in our hands. We're our own little idols now, taking our little pictures and everything else. Like, we're missing the big picture stuff. And I think the big picture stuff connects us, and it makes us feel better about life because we're humans. We're humans now, but we're spirits going through this human experience. And for us to forget our spirituality is very detrimental to who we are as we go through this. And we need to remember that and help each other out while we do it.
Agreed. And let me say one thing about myself personally is I went to law school and I should be practicing law, but I really had a problem where one side would win and one side wouldn't lose. So I went and got another degree from another law school in alternative dispute resolution and mediation. One thing when I applied to the Strauss Institute at Pepperdine School of Law, which is the #1 program in ADR, mediation, I told them it's not just about law. I can mediate couples who are going through a bad relationship. I can mediate my life throughout the day. And I think that's a huge thing to have. So the fact that I've been able to meet someone else who shares the passion of getting two people to meet in the middle and work something out, like you have for the people in the love advice, I got to hand it to you, Dustin. That is definitely something to be proud about. Now, my other comment is about you helping children. It's very sad right now because the suicide rate has gone up, the bullying has gone up, specifically the cyberbullying. And as you mentioned how we're technology is affecting us. I could see it daily, both from seeing kids locked into Facebook and they sort of don't interact with humans anymore. And then I even face it every time I go places. For instance, if I go get my hair cut, I'm the only one talking and everyone's looking at me funny because they're all on their smartphone. So I think that we humans, first of all, are not meant to not have a social life where we don't interact with humanity. And having these barriers of technology, I don't think we are quite ready for it. What do you say about that?
I remember seeing a study long time ago, and they had videoed these little baby, I don't know if they were chimps or monkeys or where the classification of the species was, but they had one mother and the child, and the child would go to the mother to be fed, the child would go to the mother to be comforted, for instruction, for love. And then they showed the other animal who had a robot-style mother that could just provide food. And the development in the various, I mean, they didn't just do this study once, like they repeated it, obviously, as you need to for scientific study, and to see the detrimental effects on the animal that only has the nourishment. It was only given just the basic sustenance versus what we really need, which is each other. It's communication. It's time together. It's understanding. We're social creatures. And trust me, despite all the stuff I do, I'm not a huge social creature. Like, when it comes to it, like, I can go on stage in front of all the people and do my stuff. I very much need my alone time, and sometimes I'm great on stage, but then you put me in a social situation, I get kind of uncomfortable. I feel good with small groups of people. I feel good by myself walking around. I like to go to the cemeteries and listen to my music and just kind of walk around and chill out. If I don't get that time, I can't relate to large amounts of people. It gets me a little bit crazy. But we need to have that balance, and we need to have that contact. And when the world is becoming in the palm of our hands and it's just pressing buttons and not interacting with people and not even going to the store to interact with people, like ordering everything online, and it just shows up by some faceless UPS driver and pretty soon a drone. At what point, do we stop communicating with people? I have a lecture I made. It's called the Great Emoji Lecture. And I was at the gym one morning. I was hopping in the shower, and the old Bengal song from the 80s was on, Walk Like an Egyptian. I was thinking about that, and I'm in there, and I'm getting ready to go start my day, and I'm listening to it. I'm like, wow, teenage girls have pretty much rocked us all the way back to the day of hieroglyphs. We're communicating with emojis now, which are pretty much just like the Egyptians did, And I'm like, this is very interesting. And so I wanted, specifically for reaching the children, although I've changed the lecture so I could do it for adults very effectively as well. The lecture is about finding our happiness. It's about unplugging. It's about remembering our spirituality. It's about remembering our default setting of being happy. Because when we're babies, when we're born, we're happy creatures.
We are.
As we
as I was saying, when I have friends who skydive with, they always say people they're troubled over this. They're using, extra drugs to deal with their pains. And, a friend of mine always saying, when you were a child, look how happy you were effortlessly. And I always come to that. So what you're saying is really resonating with me, Dustin, because what changed us?
It's society, man. We get older. So the Great Emoji Lecture is 101 emojis that illustrate this story. So it's nice for everybody because they get this great little picture show with things they understand, especially for kids they're very familiar with. And I use it to animate this story about, listen, we're born. We're spiritual creatures that come to this earth, our island home, and we start to grow. And we need love, and we need food, and we need someone to tell us it's okay. And then we're pretty happy. It's very, very rare that you meet a grumpy little baby. They need a diaper change or something. But other than that, they're pretty happy. No one's bitching. No one's sad. No one's depressed. They're okay. And then we go forward, and then we go to school, and then this is where we have our first negative interaction, we have a fight with somebody, or we have trouble with the teacher. Things start to fall apart there. And then how we learn to deal with those situations really kind of cement our foundation for how we go forward. And I think just because part of my job in healthcare is I'm an office manager now. I was anesthesia tech for 13 years, 14 years, but now I manage a couple of offices. And one of the hats I wear is makeshift IT guy, when I don't feel like calling the company in, I can fix stuff myself. 9 times out of 10, you just need to reset the system. And this is where I tell people, your default setting is happiness. You got to find your way to get back to that. And a lot of that comes, I believe, by stripping away the material want and the greed that comes with it. Yeah, we all need certain things to get by. But unfortunately, we live comparatively to other people. We look at Facebook and we see people smiling faces and, oh, they're on vacation. Oh, they're at a party. That's not their day-to-day life. That is the highlight reel. That's the picture that comes with the frame. But we live comparatively and like, oh, I'm sitting in traffic. I can barely pay my bills. I got to work this stupid job. No one's putting those pictures online. I keep saying I might run a new Instagram feed where it's just reality. Like, here I am going through the bullshit of life we all have to go through. Don't worry about everybody else that's sending you a picture of them, like sleeping with dolphins underwater or whatever the heck they do. Life is life. We all struggle. It's difficult. It's fine. But find what makes you happy and get back to that. Don't do any harm to others. Just go forward with love. That's all you got to do.
When we talked about technology, I sent you a link to something that is actually posted on my site, but this is a Chicago Tribune article, which it's titled the iPhone X proves the Unabomber right. It's not specifically the iPhone X. It's about the dangers of technology, essentially confirming his manifesto. I thought you would appreciate it because I don't know if you know this, Dustin. He's technically the smartest man alive now that Hawking died with an IQ of 168. Theodore Kaczynski has an IQ of 167, and his doctorate, his thesis, was so advanced, less than 4 people on this entire planet were able to understand it. But the point is he shouldn't have killed people to advance a goal, but what he said rings true in light of what we're dealing with now. Now, I'm going to jump onto something because this is related to your motivational speaking and how you've helped people. I want to talk about you speaking at different churches, and I wrote down the name of Patch Ministry. Let's talk about what you do with Patch Ministry and what you do when you speak at churches. I'm assuming it's along the same lines of lifting people's spirits.
Yeah, for sure, man. So Patch Ministry is just like a little catch-all name that I gave to like when I want to be really spiritual on like social media and things like that, because you dance with who brought you, but you don't deny who you are. So in my regular feed, on social media and stuff, there's a lot about pie. There's some motivational things. There's some ghost stuff. There's a little bit of this, that, and the other, and there is some spirituality stuff. But what I'm feeling like very, very Christian-like, and again, I'm not the type that tries to baptize people out in the backyard. I believe that all are one and that we all find our way and our understanding. But when I'm feeling, something biblical, like I turn to that as my umbrella, and I put stuff out under that name and stuff online. But I do speak at some churches and things. I'd like to do more, and I'm still trying to work. A large part of what I do now outside of the day job is probably 75% paranormal and 25% motivational. And, from the financial standpoint, the motivational stuff pays the less out of everything that I do, the least rather, but it means the most. And that's what I care about. And that's one of the things I try to tell people. It's like, listen, you may like to play music. You may not be a rock star, but you can play music. You can work your day job that you don't hate to pay your bills and then go play at a coffee house at night or play a local folk fest or something like that. Like, don't stop your passion just because it's not going to be amplified to the way society says it has to be for you to be a success. You just find your own success. So, for me, my motivational stuff, yeah, by far it's not the thing I do the most, but it's the thing I care about the most. And the fact that I still get to do it means the world to me. So when I go to churches, I do some things about keys to the kingdom, and I talk about things that are not Christian specific, just forgiveness, mercy, understanding, love, working together with people. You talked about being a mediator. Compromise is great because nobody gets exactly what they want, but people get enough of what they need so that we can move forward together. It doesn't have to be I win, you lose. And that's where I think we really kind of lost our way in this life. Like, why does that other person have to lose? Why can't we make it just enough so that we both get, kind of what we need? Not exactly, but just enough so we're both pretty happy and we're both forward with our lives. But it has to be not just I win, I destroy you. You look at the political ads and stuff, everything's just always so pointed in it. Like, I always think I would never run for office, but I'd think my message would always be of love. I would never slam anybody else or do anything negative. This is my message. It's all about love, But as it pertains to my religious stuff, I'm very guided by spirit, and I'm very thankful for it. And If I get just a minute here, I just want to share this with you. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I would go to Hallmark. I love to look at the fancy Christmas decorations that are way overpriced and I usually can't buy, but I like to look at them. And I look over to one side, and there's people buying birthday cards from Shoebox. And those are the cards for people that like to laugh. And then I look to the other side, and there's some people buying the Just How I Feel cards. And those cards are for people that are emotional and like to cry, you know? And then I look, and there's mahogany cards for people of different nationalities and skin tones. And then I look over, and, you know, there's blank inside for, I guess, people that are blank inside. But no matter which one you buy, man, you're buying Hallmark. You're buying one company. And I think God is very much like Hallmark cards. That's a theory I've been telling people for as long as somebody's been putting me on stage and listening to me. And I still believe it because there's different prophets of different color skin, of different tongues and different lands telling people pretty much the same message of love. And it gets twisted by man and it gets manipulated because this one has to win and that one has to lose. But if you look at the core messages, they are all about love. They're all one company. God is one big thing. And that's what we need to look at. We need to look at the commonalities. And yeah, we've got differences, but those differences should be celebrated because that's the God or goddess's little fingerprints upon us and make us all unique and different instead of saying, I don't like you because you're not exactly like me. That's bullshit, and that's what's wrong.
Now, when you started your Christian ministries and speaking at churches, did you have a religious event that brought you to God, or were you always a Christian because you were raised as such and you embraced the message?
No, not at all. I was raised Roman Catholic, graduated Catholic high school as a full-fledged atheist, wanted nothing to do with it. I appreciated the education. I had nothing against the people, but I did not get the idea of the way it was presented to me. Although I liked a lot of the things I read in the Bible, I felt the way it was handed down to me was God is kind of like an invisible absentee father, and you have to do everything right, and if you don't, then he doesn't love you, and then you go to hell. And that was the way I understood it. And maybe it was my own understanding, but I find it interesting that it was a shared understanding amongst a lot of people, and still to this day. And so I graduated there, and I was like, well, I'm still a good person. I don't do any harm to anybody, but I'm not going to church. I'm not into this. And I studied, over the years, I studied Eastern philosophy, and I got into Buddhism for a little bit, and then I read Taoism for a little bit, and I kind of dabbled, you know. And it wasn't until I was getting married that things started to change in my head, and I started trying to look for a church that I like to go to, and I tried different ones. I tried Baptist churches and things like that, and ended up in a national Catholic parish that I really liked. It's basically like all Catholicism, but we don't believe that the Pope is right in everything he does. You know, like we don't believe in papal decree. We believe in what God says. So I was cool with that. Now I'm at an Episcopalian church, and I just identify as Christian because it makes sense to me. But what I love it, honestly, the thing that brought me back was K-Love Radio, which is a nationally, I think it's international, radio station, listener supported, and it's all Christian music, rock music. But when I started listening to it and listening to the DJs and stuff, I started to realize what I was missing was relationship and forgiveness and mercy and understanding. And when those things are emphasized, and I started reading the Bible and starting to see with my own eyes what was manipulated by man and the stories that get twisted to further agenda. And then I started reading the Dead Sea Scrolls that were probably most likely written by the Essenes, which is believed to be the group that were probably closest to Christ when he was here. And those books were revered at the time, but then thrown out because they didn't match the political agenda of the day when they were putting the Bible together.
In the 380, right? 380 AD, Constantine in Rome?
Indeed. And because when Constantine gets in, things change. And that's actually part of my Halloween lecture, too. But the Essenes, actually, there's a passage where they say that the spirit world is alive and all around us. It's just not always easily perceived. And I always think about that, and that brings me a lot of comfort, too, when I think about the interaction we have as paranormal investigators. That there's some credence in there and some books that were once very highly revered but then kicked out for whatever reason, that the spirit world is alive and around us. We just cannot always perceive it. And I think that makes sense to me. And I think that a loving God or goddess, however you perceive them, would allow for visitation. I'm not one to ever say spirits are trapped. I think some linger a little bit longer than others. I think some check in more than others. But I don't think a loving God or goddess who ever puts a lock on the door and says, no, this isn't for you. You can't come in. And I think that understanding just makes a lot more sense to me in all my experiences and all my research and in all my years on this planet. It's about love, it's about mercy, it's about understanding, and it's about comfort for each other.
Love, mercy, comfort, understanding, and forgiveness, as you mentioned earlier, and like we said, mercy. But
Yes,
forgiveness is such a major thing because it's not just for us that do the forgiving, the people that are that we forgive, it's such a big weight lifted off their shoulders, and we show them that we still love them, we're merciful, and if you don't have that, then that builds sort of resentment. So I definitely agree with what you've been saying, and I would think a lot of people agree. And I'm really actually glad that you know several things about the origins of the Bible. I'm Greek, and I was raised Greek Orthodox. We also don't believe in the Pope. We don't believe that there is any man that should be compared to God or Jesus or anything like that. We believe we have 5 patriarchs, and they're just the heads of the church. So there's little subtle differences, and obviously that everything was in the New Testament was written in Greek, and it's very sad that books that should be in the Bible were removed about 350 years after the death of Jesus, only because, like you said, it fit very political reasons of why Constantine wanted to control his empire from all the people who were turning to Christianity as opposed to the people who were believing in the multiple gods. Very sad case.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? That's something that we still do today. And I always use the analogy that my uncle handed down to me many, many moons ago. The world needs a boogeyman. And if you want to organize your troops and you want to get your country and you want to get your kinfolk behind you, you tell them who that boogeyman is. And you change whatever text or whatever beliefs, whatever you have to do to make sure we have a unified boogeyman. This is who we are against. This is who we are afraid of. This is who is responsible for our problems. And then you can go forward and do whatever you want because people will believe you because they all know who the bad guy is. Once you define who's wearing the white hat and who's wearing the black hat, the world becomes very simple. And that's the problem, is that we're all in shades of gray, and we just tend to forget that because it's convenient. We just want to be on the winning side. We just want to know who the bad guy is.
Yes, agreed. Now, we are getting down to the last 5 minutes, so I'm going to save it for 2 things. And then next time, like I said, I want to have you back for a full show so we can go in more in detail. And when I call you off air, if you could real quick, just have a glance at that really quick newspaper article that I sent you via your phone, because that way that could be something if you're interested in talking about next time, since it's my passion. Because it was Halloween yesterday, and I've been asking this of every guest all week long, can you tell us one story, maybe not of what you experienced, maybe of a case you investigated, or anything that would be fitting for the season?
Oh, sure. I'll give you one of my favorites. As I told you when I was a kid, I was my first experience, and I wanted to learn more about local legends and stuff. I remember getting a book, and in that book, there was a story about a New England legend called the Red-Headed Phantom of Route 44. And he's a part of my Spirits in New England lecture that I just got done doing this past October. And there's a certain stretch of Route 44 that runs up through Rehoboth, Massachusetts, down between Dighton and Seekonk and Taunton and all that. And there's this great story about this gentleman that you'll see walking. And he has red hair, red flannel shirt, dirty work pants or jeans, and people would see him. And now hitchhiking phantoms are not anything uncommon. They're not just for Rehoboth, Massachusetts. They're all over the world. There's different ones. There's like the goddess Pele over in Hawaii, who disguises herself as a homeless man, and you give her a ride, and she reveals herself and grants you a wish, which is also a very convenient story if you're a homeless person trying to get a ride throughout Hawaii. But here in Massachusetts, they tell about the red-headed phantom, and you may see him sometimes, and his eyes may be red as fire, they may be black as night. Sometimes he pops right up in front of your car, and you drive through him, and then you jam your brakes on, you get out, and nobody's there. Cars of 3 seem to be a magical thing for him. He likes to jump in and sit in the back seat, appearing to somebody who's driving by and give him a scare. Apparently, if you have your radio on the AM station, which is apparently the approved frequency and favorite of the spirit world, his voice will come through, and there'll be mocking laughter and such. And so I remember reading this as a kid and thinking, man, when I get my license, I'm going looking for this guy. This is what I want to see. And I drive this road very often because I have an office in Massachusetts. So I get to cut through there quite a bit. And I always look for this guy. And just a couple of years ago, I finally had my moment. And I remember driving up this dark road, and I see, here comes a guy with a red flannel shirt, dirty jeans, red hair. And I pulled my truck over. I was so excited, like ridiculous, because this would normally be scary. But for me, it's exciting. And I leaned over because my doors were manual and not, power. And I leaned over and I opened the door. And in leans a very confused and very angry looking real man who was not the redheaded phantom of Route 44. And he did not want to ride. He was quite perturbed that I had stopped, apparently. But I look for the spirit still when I drive through here, because I think these are the kind of stories, these are the kind of legends that make it really all worthwhile.
Yes, and I hope I could actually start branching out and doing some sort of more investigations into ghosts, paranormal, that are not just really strictly extraterrestrial, and be more hands-on, because I've only had 2 UFO sightings, and the only ghost experience was more of being in a haunted place and hearing footsteps. Now, the psychic medium that was with us was able to see the little girl, but I'd never had any sort of experience. So in keeping up with the spirit of Halloween, Dustin, thank you for sharing that story. Now, I do want to spend a couple minutes in talking about where people can find you, where people can see your upcoming lectures, motivational speaking, and any events you'll be throughout the States or even in the UKEU.
Oh, sure. So in everything you need to know about me, you can find at DustinPari.com. That's DustinPari.com. That's my website. I update it pretty regularly, and definitely stay on top of my events and everything. Next up for me, I'm going to be over in Michigan at the Old Mill Parafest in 2 weeks. Fantastic little Paracon, great people, nice investigation, and an incredible pizza place right around the corner that I can't wait to get back to. And then the week after that, I'm going to be up in New Hampshire, checking out the old Mount Washington Hotel with my friends Amy and Adam and Grant Wilson, Chip Coffee. There's a haunted masquerade ball. It's a wonderful time, a great investigation, beautiful place. They already have snow on the ground. And then I get some Christmas lectures kicking up throughout libraries, all throughout New England, which I love going to libraries and meeting all the people. And then I've got a benefit for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention on December 1st down in Dulles in Virginia, just next to Washington, D.C. And then another one December 15th up in Somerset, Mass. And that one is at a Church of Our Savior. And then we even go Christmas caroling afterwards. I think this year we're going to the retirement home to bring a little joy to the people that are there, to some of the infirmed and everything. And that's money for that goes to the church and also to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So we look forward to that. And if you're on YouTube, please, please, please go check out youtube.com/Dustin Pari. I've got 60 videos on there called Hey, Got a Minute. They're all 2 to 3 minutes long because we're busy people. And they're all crazy, happy, motivational videos, and we worked really hard on them, and we need more people to see them. So I hope you get a chance to check that out. Hey, Got a Minute on YouTube.
And they will. And again, Dustin, I want to thank you. Like I said, we'll have you back for a longer interview, probably before some of these events, so we could talk about it more. And by the way, if you see Grant before I have a chance to bring you back on, tell him Dr. J says hello.
You got it, brother. You got it.
Now, again, like I said, I will call you back off air real quick, but if you can, real briefly, check out that quick article. That way we can have a quick chat about that, okay?
Will do, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody out there for listening.
Thanks again, Dustin. Okay, everybody, like I said, stay tuned. When we come back from break, you will hear the one and only Daniel Estulin. Now, this is only the first of 2 interviews. He was supposed to do a full 2-hour block, but of course I wanted to have more topics because of Halloween. But this coming Tuesday is our elections. Normally, of course, we would have more topics on various different things, but because of the elections, Monday night will be dedicated to that with Daniel Estulin being back. But Tuesday, we have a CIA interrogator that I'm talking to about coming on. And the second hour, we will be going through the elections. And of course, I'm also going to have a show about QAnon very soon. So there's lots of exciting stuff to come. Remember, folks, because you're going to be hearing Daniel Estulin, let me just plug in some things right now. Every single social media thing you need to remember is at DRJ Radio Live. Again, Dr. J Radio Live, drjradiolive.com is the website. minds.com. Open the account, subscribe to Dr. J Radio Live. It pays you an Ethereum-based cryptocurrency just for using it, just for being active. From YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, whatever you think of, Pinterest, Google+, Gmail. Again, folks, it's all DRJ Radio Live. Like I said, stay tuned. When we come back from break, you'll hear the one and only Daniel Estalon. Tomorrow, Flashback Fridays begin with my very first interview from March 25th, 2013, when I was on Revolution Radio with my co-host Preston Dennett, who didn't last very long because of the time schedule. We will be interviewing Stanton Friedman, which, should I say, we did interview him 5.5 years ago. That being said, folks, I'm going on break. We come back with Mr. Daniel Estalon.